The Boy Detectives Club. By Edogawa Ranpo. The Black Demon. The creature was said to be completely black, as if covered in ink, an utterly terrifying sight. Rumors of the Black Demon spread throughout Tokyo, yet strangely, no one could clearly identify it. It appeared only in darkness. Witnesses reported a shadowy figure, the same color as the night, moving vaguely in the gloom. No one could tell if it was male or female, adult or child. One night, a watchman in a quiet residential area, striking his wooden clappers as he made his rounds, saw something emerge from a long, black fence. It was the same color as the fence, shaped like a human, and wobbled unsteadily into the middle of the street. Stopping in front of the watchman's lantern, it flashed a ghastly white grin and cackled before vanishing like a black gust of wind. The next morning, the watchman recounted his experience, his face still pale. He said the creature's blackness was so complete that it was like seeing only a set of white teeth floating and laughing in midair. He shuddered, constantly glancing over his shoulder as he spoke. One dark night, a boatman rowing down the Sumida River noticed strange ripples beside his boat. There were no stars, and the water was as black as ink. Only the faint white wake of his oars disturbed the surface. Yet, separate from the oars' ripples, constant, mysterious whitecaps lapped against his boat. The ripples resembled those made by a swimmer, but the swimmer itself was nowhere to be seen. A chill ran down the boatman's spine. He forced himself to shout at the invisible swimmer, "Hey, who's swimming there?" The whitecaps paused momentarily, and just where the invisible being's face should have been, something white appeared. It was a set of human front teeth. The teeth floated on the black water, cackling with that same unsettling laughter. Terrified, the boatman rowed away as fast as he could, without looking back. Then there was this odd story. One moonlit night, a university student stood in Ueno Park, gazing at the moon. He noticed his shadow, dark and clear on the ground, wasn't moving. No matter how he moved his head or hands, the shadow remained still. The student felt a growing unease. A motionless shadow, as if dead, was a disturbing thought. He wondered if he was losing his mind. Unable to stand it any longer, he started to walk, but then, something even more terrifying happened. The shadow didn't move. Even as the student walked 3-5 meters away, the shadow remained on the ground in its original spot. He froze, staring at the shadow against his will. As he watched, the center of the shadow's face suddenly turned white, as if splitting open. The shadow opened its mouth, revealing white teeth, and that same cackling laughter echoed through the park. Imagine your own shadow grinning at you. Could anything be more unnerving? The student screamed and ran without looking back. That, too, was the Black Demon. Later, he realized that, facing the moon, his shadow should have been behind him. The dark human shape lying in front of him must have been the demon itself. Thus, the rumors of the Black Demon intensified daily. Stories circulated of the demon leaping from the darkness to strangle passers-by, of wrapping lone children in a black cloth and rolling them along the ground. The tales multiplied, and young women and children became too frightened to go out at night. The demon was like the invisible cloak from old fairy tales. Once worn, the cloak rendered its wearer invisible, free to commit any mischief undetected. The Black Demon, similarly, could melt into the darkness, unseen. The darkness of Indians or South Sea Islanders isn't true blackness. The demon's body must be darker than the deepest ink, a blackness so absolute it becomes invisible to the human eye. Like a ninja, the Black Demon can do whatever it pleases in darkness or against a black background. If it were to plot some terrible crime, it could simply vanish into the shadows after the deed, making capture impossible. For those trying to catch it, there could be no more frustrating adversary. Who is this Black Demon? Man or woman? Adult or child? And what does this enigmatic shadow intend to do? Is it content with leaping out from fences, swimming in black water, and mimicking people's shadows? No, it cannot be. It must be plotting some unimaginable evil. What could it be? Pitted against this demon is the Boy Detectives Club, led by young Kobayashi. Composed of 10 brave elementary school students, the club is led by Kobayashi Yoshio, known as the brilliant assistant of Detective Akechi. And Kobayashi's mentor is, of course, the great detective Akechi Kogoro. Japan's greatest private detective and his Boy Detectives Club versus a shape-shifting, phantom-like Black Demon. How will this battle unfold, pursuing the monster? News of the shadowy monster appearing throughout Tokyo, flashing its white teeth and cackling in the darkness, spread like wildfire, even making headlines in the newspapers. Older people whispered that it must be a demonic entity, a ghost. Younger people scoffed at the idea of ghosts. They believed it was a human being, some fool playing a ridiculous prank. However, as days passed, it became apparent that the black figure, be it ghost or human, wasn't merely playing pranks. It seemed to be plotting something sinister. In retrospect, the black demon's appearance marked the beginning of an extraordinary series of crimes. Centered in Tokyo, it involved not only Japanese but also international figures, a truly global criminal affair. Let us now recount the events, as the black demon's pranks gradually transformed into criminal acts. As you know, among the members of the Boy Detectives Club, led by young Kobayashi, was a boy named Kotsura Shoiki. Kotsura lived along the Tamagawa train line in Setagaya Ward, attending a different school from Hashiba Soji and the others. However, Shoiki and Soji were cousins, and Soji had invited him to join the Boy Detectives Club. Not only did Kotsura join, but he also invited his classmate, Shinozaki Hajime, who also lived along the Tamagawa line. One evening, Kotsura visited Shinozaki's house, just one train stop away. They studied and chatted in Shinozaki's room until around 8 o'clock. On his way home, Kotsura encountered something terrifying. A timid boy might have taken a detour along the main street, but Kotsura was a bold boy, a sumo wrestler at school. He confidently took a shortcut through the back streets. Both sides of the street were lined with fences, concrete walls, and hedges. The streetlights were dim, and despite the early hour, the streets were deserted. It was spring, so the weather wasn't cold, but walking through the silent streets sent a chill down Kotsura's spine. Rounding a corner, he saw a dark figure walking under a streetlight about 20 meters ahead. Strangely, the figure wore no hat or clothes. Yet, it was clearly human-shaped, black as ink from head to toe. Even Kotsura was startled. He froze. Could it be the infamous black demon? His heart pounded. An icy chill ran down his back. He almost turned and fled, but he didn't. He managed to control himself. He remembered he was a member of the prestigious Boy Detectives Club. Just moments ago, he had boasted to Shinozaki, "If I ever met that thing, I'd unmask it." The thought of the Boy Detectives Club emboldened him. Hiding behind a hedge, he watched as the monster, seemingly unaware of being followed, danced along the road. There was no mistaking it. It was indeed a human figure, black as a cat. It's not a ghost or a specter. It must be human. Kotsura decided to follow, careful not to be seen. The monster, like a shadow come to life, glided swiftly away. Kotsura struggled to keep up, darting from shadow to shadow. Leaving the town behind, they crossed an open field. A large temple hall loomed against the starry sky. It was Yogenji Temple, an ancient structure dating back to the Edo period. The black demon walked along the temple hedge, then slipped through a gap in the greenery behind the hall. Kotsura, despite his skepticism towards ghost stories, felt a chill as he realized he was in a graveyard. Countless tombstones, old and new, stood close together on the damp, mossy ground. The starlight and the faint glow of the temple lanterns made the rectangular stones appear to float in the darkness. Kotsura, his heart pounding, followed the demon. Being short, he could easily hide behind the tombstones, scurrying forward and occasionally standing on tiptoe to keep the figure in sight. As he rose on tiptoe yet again, he was startled to find the black figure standing close by, just 2 tombstones away. It was facing him directly, its white eyes and teeth gleaming in its inky face. The monster had known he was being followed all along. It had lured him into the deserted graveyard to confront him. Kotsura felt paralyzed, like a mouse before a cat, unable to look away, staring at the shadowy figure. His heart hammered in his chest. He braced himself for an attack. Suddenly, the monster's white teeth stretched wide, then parted vertically into a grotesque grin, and it erupted into a cackling laughter, like some monstrous bird. Kotsura was petrified, like being trapped in a nightmare, unable to scream for help. But the monster didn't attack. Still cackling, it suddenly vanished behind a tombstone. Kotsura waited, tense, expecting it to reappear, but it didn't. Yet, it hadn't left the area behind the tombstone. If it had moved, he would have seen its black form flitting between the stones. Alone in the deathly silent graveyard, surrounded by cold stone, he felt as though he were dreaming. Finally, he cautiously peered behind the tombstone where the monster had stood. It was empty, no trace of the creature. Even if it had crawled away, he should have seen some movement. Its complete disappearance was baffling. The monster had vanished into thin air, like a Western demon dissolving into smoke. Was it really a ghost? Terror welled up inside him. He screamed something unintelligible and fled the graveyard, running breathlessly towards the lighted streets. Kotsura remained convinced that the monster had vanished into thin air. But how could that be? If the black demon was human, it couldn't simply dissolve into the atmosphere. The kidnapping. 2 days later, again around 8 in the evening, a well-dressed woman in her 30s and a charming 5-year-old girl in Western clothes emerged from the grand gate of the Shinozaki residence. The woman was Hajimi's aunt, and the girl was his young cousin. They had been visiting since the afternoon and were now heading home. The aunt, hoping to hail a taxi on the main street, hurried through the dimly lit residential area, holding the girl's hand. Then, once more, the black shadow appeared behind them. It flitted from wall to wall, silently approaching them. When it was just a meter away, it suddenly pounced on the little girl, scooping her up. "Hey! What are you doing?" the woman cried out, trying to grab the figure. But the black shadow swiftly kicked her to the ground, pinning her down, flashing its white teeth and cackling as she fell. The woman saw the creature's face for the first time. Recognizing the infamous black demon, she screamed in terror and fainted. The monster vanished with the girl. But was this terrifying black demon truly a kidnapper? Later that night, around 11 o'clock, a policeman patrolling a quiet residential area, also along the Tamagawa line about a kilometer from the Shinozaki home, found a little girl about 5 years old, crying in the middle of the deserted street. It was Shinozaki's little cousin, the one who had been snatched by the black demon. Still very young, the girl couldn't answer the policeman's questions clearly. But from her fragmented words, it seemed the monster had taken her to a deserted field, given her sweets, and asked her name. When she answered Kimura Sochiko, as her mother had taught her, the monster became agitated, abandoned her, and vanished. It appeared to be a case of mistaken identity. The monster wasn't targeting just any child, but a specific one. Who was it mistaking Sochiko for? The next day, another incident occurred, this time in broad daylight, right in front of the Shinozaki house. A little girl, about 4 or 5 years old, was playing alone near the gate when a Chindenwaye parade came by. Led by a man dressed as Tange Seizan with a large drum strapped to his chest, the parade included a young woman in Western dress playing the shamisen, a man in a silk hat and tailcoat handing out flyers, and men in happy coats carrying banners. They danced along to the music, swaying their hips. At the rear of the parade, a man in a baggy, red and white harlequin costume, a pointed hat with bells, and a Western-style clown mask, shuffled along. Seeing the little girl by the Shinozaki gate, he beckoned playfully. The girl, seemingly cheerful, approached the clown. "Here, I'll give you this," the clown said, placing a beautiful candy stick in her hand. "I'll give you lots more if you come with me." He took her hand and started walking. Lured by the promise of sweets, the child followed. After walking about 100 meters, the clown suddenly veered off the parade route, pulling the girl down a quiet side street. The other Chindenwaye performers continued on their way, seemingly unconcerned. The clown quickened his pace, leading the girl into the woods of a nearby shrine. "Mister, where are we going?" the girl asked innocently, looking around the deserted woods. "It's a nice place. A place with lots of candy and dolls," the clown said in a strange, halting dialect, as if speaking a foreign language. "Little girl, tell me your name." "What's your name?" "I'm Tar-chan," the girl replied innocently. "What's your real name?" "What's your father's name?" "Miyamoto," she said. "Miyamoto? Are you sure? Not Shinozaki?" "No. Miyamoto." "Then, the house you were playing in front of earlier, is that not your house?" "No. My house is much smaller." Hearing this, the clown released Tar-chan's hand and clicked his tongue behind his mask. Without another word, he abandoned the girl in the woods and hurried away. Soon, the strange incident became the talk of the town when Tar-chan, crying, returned home and told her mother. The police were also informed. Although the girl's account was childish, it was clear that a Chindenwaye clown had tried to abduct her but had changed his mind. The method was the same as the black demons the previous night. It seemed someone was targeting little girls around 5 years old. Shinozaki Hajime also had a charming little sister about that age. Could she be the monster's target? Considering the circumstances, it seemed likely. The Black Demon, which had been appearing all over Tokyo, from the Sumida River to Ueno Park, was now focusing its appearances on the area around Shinozaki's house. The places where Kotsura Shoiki had encountered it, where Shinozaki's cousin had been kidnapped, and where Tachan had been almost abducted were all centered around the Shinozaki home. The monster's motive was becoming clearer. But if it simply wanted to kidnap a child for ransom, why disguise itself as a black shadow and terrify people? There had to be a deeper, more sinister plot, the cursed jewel. That evening, after the incident with the girl playing near the gate, Shinozaki's father, looking worried and pale, called his wife and Hajime to a private room. Hajime had never seen his father so subdued. Both mother and son felt their hearts pounding with apprehension. Shinozaki's father sat on the floor in front of the alcove, his arms crossed. On the purple sandalwood stand in the alcove, where a vase usually stood, sat a peculiar object. Inside a square box lined with purple velvet was a dazzling, 1 centimeter diameter jewel. Hajime had never seen such a beautiful gem in his house before. "I haven't told you about the terrible curse attached to this jewel," his father began in a hushed voice, as if about to reveal something of great importance. "I didn't believe in such things. I didn't want to worry you with idle tales. But I can no longer keep it a secret. The incidents involving young girls these past 2 days are deeply disturbing. We must be careful." "Do you mean there's a connection between this jewel and the recent incidents?" his mother asked, her face as pale as her husband's, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes. This jewel carries a terrible curse. And it's becoming clear that the story is not merely a legend. As you know, I bought this jewel from a foreigner in Shanghai 2 years ago when I was in China. The price was incredibly low. Less than a tenth of its market value, 57,000 yen. I was delighted, thinking I had found a great bargain. But later, another foreigner discreetly informed me that the jewel had a strange history, and those who knew about it wouldn't buy it. That's why it was sold so cheaply. The story goes." His father paused, beckoning them closer. Hajime moved closer, feeling as though he was about to hear a chilling ghost story. The usually bright electric light seemed strangely dim. This jewel was originally embedded in the forehead of a large Buddha statue, the principal object of worship in an ancient temple deep in India. "Hajime, you learned about this at school, haven't you? It's called the Byakugo." This story begins 100 years ago. There was a war near the temple, and it was burned down, many people killed. The enemy took the jewel embedded in the Buddha's face. It passed through many hands and eventually made its way to Europe. It's an extremely valuable gem, so anyone would pay a high price for it. During that same war, the princess of the local ruler was killed by an enemy bullet. She was young and beautiful, deeply loved by her father and revered as a goddess by the local Indians. The Indians never forgot these 2 tragedies. They believed the Byakugo, the Buddha's life force, had to be returned. The princess had to be avenged. These 2 desires intertwined, becoming the curse attached to this jewel. This was a devout community, its people fanatically devoted to the Buddha, willing to endure any hardship, even sacrifice their lives, for their faith. They resolved to avenge the desecration of their sacred statue and the death of their princess. 2 fearless Indians, skilled in dark magic, were chosen to seek out the enemy and travel the world to carry out their mission. If those 2 died, others would be sent. This curse would continue for decades, even centuries, until the jewel was returned to the Buddha's forehead. Since then, anyone possessing this jewel has been targeted by a shadowy figure. Especially if there's a young girl in the family, the figure kidnaps and secretly kills the girl as revenge for the princess. And the body is never found, no matter how hard the police search. That's the story I heard from the foreigner in Shanghai. Of course, I didn't believe it. How could such a thing be true? I thought the foreigner probably wanted the jewel himself and, having lost it to me, invented this story to scare me into selling it back to him at cost. I had almost forgotten about it, but seeing how young girls have been kidnapped near our home these past 2 nights, and that the kidnapper is a black monster, I'm starting to feel uneasy. It matches the cursed jewel story perfectly. "You mean our Midori might be kidnapped?" his mother gasped, almost leaping up to protect her daughter. Midori was Hajime's 5-year-old sister, yes. But don't worry now. As long as we're here, Midori is safe. But from now on, we must not let her play outside, and even inside the house, we must never let her out of our sight. His father was right. To reach Midori's playroom, one had to pass through this room. And Midori was always accompanied by her nanny and a maid, but, father, that's strange. The Indians should only seek revenge on the original soldiers who committed the crime. Why would they seek revenge on us now? Hajime asked, puzzled. No, that's not how it works. The curse targets whoever currently possesses the jewel, regardless of whether they were the original perpetrators. Many people in Europe have suffered because of this curse. Some have even fallen ill or gone mad from the terror. Is that so? How strange. Oh, I have an idea. Father, I'm a member of the Boy Detectives Club, so, Hajime began excitedly. His father chuckled, ha ha ha. It's beyond you, son. We're dealing with Indian magicians. You know, Indian magic is world famous for its mystery. They can throw a rope into the air and climb it like a tree. They can even bury someone alive and dig them up months later, still alive. Indian magic is beyond comprehension. Well, if we can't handle it, how about consulting Mr. Akechi? He captured the magician like 20 faces, didn't he? Hajime said proudly. He believed Akechi could defeat even Indian magicians. Mr. Akechi might have a good idea. We'll consult him tomorrow. Even his father had to acknowledge Akechi's brilliance, but would the black demon wait until tomorrow? Was it already eavesdropping outside the shoji screen, listening to their conversation, the Black Hand? Suddenly, Hajime gasped, staring at the alcove behind his father, frozen like a statue. His face was ashen, his eyes wide, his mouth agape. He looked like a grotesque doll. His parents, alarmed by Hajime's reaction, quickly turned to the alcove. Their faces mirrored Hajime's terror. The shoji screen beside the alcove had slid open silently. A black hand reached in, snatching the jewel box from the stand. The hand retreated just as silently, disappearing behind the screen. The black demon had audaciously stolen the cursed jewel right before their eyes. Shocked, they were too stunned to react, let alone chase the hand. As it disappeared, Shinozuki's father finally regained his composure. Am I a thief? Come quickly, he shouted for his secretary. Darling, what if something happens to Midori? His wife cried in a trembling voice. Yes, come with me. Shinozuki grabbed his wife's hand and rushed to Midori's room. Fortunately, she was safe. Meanwhile, Imai, the secretary, rushed in, followed by Hajime. A glass door leading to the garden was ajar. They jumped out, pursuing the thief. The black demon was just ahead, running through the dark garden. Chasing the black figure in the darkness was difficult, but the garden was surrounded by a high concrete wall, making escape impossible. As expected, the thief, reaching the wall, hesitated, then ran along it. Tall trees and low bushes lined the wall. The thief darted through the trees, leaping over the bushes, running like the wind. Then, something incredible happened. As the thief jumped over a low bush, it vanished. Hajime and Imai assumed it was hiding, cautiously approaching the bush, but it was empty. The thief had disappeared into thin air. Soon, 2 policemen arrived, alerted by phone. They and the household staff searched the garden thoroughly with flashlights, but found no trace of the intruder. The jewel was gone. Was this Indian magic? Only magic could explain such a complete disappearance. Recall how Kotsura Shoiki had lost sight of the black demon in Yogenji Temple's graveyard. This was exactly the same. The thief had vanished right before their eyes. The magic of the Indians. Could they really perform such feats? Or perhaps this seemingly impossible disappearance was a clever trick. 2 Indians. The next day, the Shinozuki household was under tight security. Midori was confined to a single room, the shoji screens closed, guarded inside and out by her parents, 2 secretaries, a nanny, and 2 maids. Dozens of eyes constantly watched over little Midori. Outside, plainclothes detectives from the local police station patrolled the gate and the surrounding walls. Security was airtight, yet, her parents couldn't relax. Last night's incident proved the thief was like a ninja. Even the tightest security might not be enough. Hours passed in anxious anticipation. Just after 3 in the afternoon, Hajime burst in from school. Father, I'm home. Is Midori all right? Yes, she's playing happily. But you're much later than usual, aren't you? His father asked suspiciously. Yes, there's a reason. I went to Mr. Akechi's office after school. Oh, I see. Did you meet him? No, he's away on a case, somewhere far away. So, I talked to Kobayashi. He's so smart. He came up with a brilliant plan. Father, guess what he suggested? Hajime was beaming. Well, I can't guess. Tell me. All right, listen closely. Hajime whispered in his father's ear, as if afraid of being overheard. He said we should disguise Midori. What? A child so young? His father whispered back, surprised. Yes, listen. Kobayashi asked if Midori had a close aunt or someone she was fond of. I told him about the one in Shinagawa Ward, you know, Mrs. Nomura, whom Midori adores. Kobayashi said it would be best to secretly take Midori to her house for a while. That way, the thief would be watching our house in vain. But he also had a plan to avoid being seen during the transfer. He'll bring a boy, about Midori's age, to our house to play. Then, he'll secretly dress Midori in the boy's clothes. Kobayashi will then leave the house with the disguised Midori, as if nothing's amiss. See, but just to be safe, we'll call our usual car, and Imai will sit in the front seat and escort them to Mrs. Nomura's house in Shinagawa. Clever, isn't it? It's foolproof. I see. As expected of your leader, Kobayashi. That's a brilliant plan. I agree. Actually, I've been thinking of sending Midori away somewhere, but I was worried about the journey. His father was impressed. He consulted his wife, who, seeing no reason to object, agreed, but added, but what about the boy he brings? What if something happens to him? Don't worry. The black creature is only interested in Midori. Even if he's kidnapped, he won't be harmed. Besides, Kobayashi will come back for him right away. He said we should prepare another similar set of boys' clothes. He'll dress the boy in those and take him back. So, 2 similar-looking boys will leave our gate. Funny, isn't it? The thieves will be baffled. Hajime's explanation satisfied his mother. He immediately called Akechi's office and, using a prearranged code, relayed the plan to Kobayashi. As dusk approached, Kobayashi arrived at the Shinozaki house with a charming boy about Midori's size. In a secluded room, the transformation began. Dressed in a cute Eton suit, Midori's bobbed hair hidden under a large hat, she was instantly a dashing little boy. 5-year-old Midori, oblivious to the situation, was thrilled to wear the Eton suit. Once ready, they told her she was going to Aunt Nomura's in Shinagawa. Kobayashi put the letter Shinozaki's father had written to Mrs. Nomura into his pocket. Holding Midori's hand, he walked conspicuously towards the gate. A car was waiting. Kobayashi lifted Midori into the back seat, where she sat beside him. Imai, the secretary, got into the front passenger seat, and the car quietly pulled away. It was almost dark. People on the street were barely visible. The car drove along the tram tracks for a while, then turned onto a quiet side street, picking up speed. The houses thinned out, the surroundings growing desolate. Driver, aren't we going the wrong way? Kobayashi asked, sensing something amiss. The driver didn't respond. Hey, driver, can you hear me? Kobayashi shouted, tapping the driver's shoulder. I can hear you perfectly, a voice replied. The driver and Imai turned around. Their faces, both were as black as soot, as if they had emerged from a chimney. Simultaneously, they flashed white grins and erupted into that chilling cackle. It was 2 Indians. The driver's transformation was one thing, but Imai, the secretary who had opened the car door for them moments ago, had somehow turned into a black demon. How was this possible? Was this one of the Indians' fabled magical feats, the silver medals? Kobayashi felt bewildered. When he got into the car at the Shinozaki gate, both the secretary and the driver had clearly been Japanese. He would never have gotten into a car with an Indian driver. Yet, within minutes, they had transformed into black demons. This was beyond comprehension. Was it some form of Indian magic? But there was no time to ponder. He had to protect Midori. He had to escape the car and the clutches of the enemy. He quickly scooped Midori into his arms, preparing to open the door and jump. He. No, no. If you run, we shoot, the black driver growled in broken Japanese. Two Indian hands reached out from behind, pointing pistols at Kobayashi and Midori. Damn it! Kobayashi gritted his teeth. He could escape alone, but not with Midori. He had no choice but to surrender. Seeing his hesitation, the Indians stopped the car. The one in the passenger seat got out, opened the back door, and quickly tied Kobayashi and Midori's hands behind their backs, gagging them with cloths. The driver kept his pistol trained on them, making resistance futile. Unnoticed by the Indians, Kobayashi, while being tied, managed to slip his right hand into his pocket. He pulled out something that glinted like silver coins and discreetly placed it in the corner at the base of the car's rear bumper, pushing it as far into the corner as possible. They looked like 100-yen silver coins, but they weren't. They were lead medals, silver in color, about 30 of them. Fortunately, the Indians didn't notice. They gagged Kobayashi and Midori, closed the door, and got back into the car. It sped away across the desolate field. Then, something peculiar happened at the base of the narrow rear bumper. The silver coin-like objects, jostled by the car's movement, began to slide out one by one, falling onto the road. It took 7 or 8 minutes for all 30 medals to drop. Shortly after the last medal fell, the car stopped in a deserted town. Later, it was discovered that the location was a desolate, newly developed residential area on the opposite side of Setagaya Ward from the Shinozaki home. Kobayashi and Midori were pulled from the car and dragged into a small Western-style house. As they entered the gate, Kobayashi did something else. He had been clenching his tied right hand, but he now slowly unclenched it, unnoticed by the Indians. Silver medals dropped one by one onto the soft ground. 5 medals were scattered between the car and the gate, about 2 meters apart. What were these medals? Why did Kobayashi have so many? And why did he scatter them along the road and at the gate? Try to imagine. The Indians dragged Kobayashi and Midori into the house, down a narrow corridor, and into a back room. There, in the corner of the floor, was a square, dark hole. An entrance to a basement. Go down there, one of the Indians ordered menacingly. Kobayashi, his hands tied, couldn't resist. He had no choice but to climb down the rickety ladder into the dark hole. He landed with a thud at the bottom. One of the Indians climbed down halfway and tossed Midori's small body down onto Kobayashi. The ladder was pulled up, the entrance sealed, and the basement was plunged into total darkness. Kobayashi and Midori lay there, bound and gagged, in the darkness. Midori cried, but the gag muffled her sobs into whimpers. What would become of these two? The boy search party. Around the same time, 6 elementary school boys walked past the gate of Yogenji Temple, near the Shinozaki house, chatting. Leading the group was Shinozaki's stout friend, Kotsura Shoiki. Having heard about the incident from Shinozaki at school, Kotsura had called his cousin, Hashiba Soji, who relayed the news to the other Boy Detectives Club members. They gathered at Kotsura's house and decided to visit the Shinozaki family. 3 members couldn't make it, so only 6 were present. The Boy Detectives Club had a pact to help each other in times of trouble. Now, their fellow member, Shinozaki Hajime, and his family were threatened by a terrifying demon. Moreover, it was the black demon that had been terrorizing Tokyo. The Boy Detectives Club couldn't stand idly by. Knowing their leader, Kobayashi, had gone to assist Shinozaki, they were even more determined. They were eager to capture the black demon and prove their skills. As they reached Yogenji Temple, Kotsura stopped and told the others about his previous adventure. Recall how the black demon had vanished in the temple graveyard. It really disappeared into thin air, Kotsura said. I don't believe in ghosts, but it was in a graveyard, and it was a dark night. Even I was terrified and ran away. The graveyard is behind the main hall. He pointed towards the back of the temple. The boys followed Kotsura into the temple grounds, looking around the desolate area. Suddenly, Hashiba Soji, the youngest, grabbed Kotsura's arm. Shoiki, look over there. There's something. His voice trembled. They looked where Soji was pointing. Something was moving in the bushes beneath a small tree near the temple gate. It looked like a human foot. A foot emerged from the bushes and wriggled like a caterpillar. Despite their bravado, the boys froze, exchanging nervous glances. It was understandable. It was dusk, the temple grounds were deserted, they had just heard Kotsura's ghost story, and now a human foot had emerged from the bushes. Even adults would be scared. All right, I'll check it out. True to his sumo wrestler spirit, Kotsura approached the bushes alone, leaving the frightened boys behind. Who's there? Who's hiding there? He shouted. There was no reply. The foot continued to wriggle. Kotsura took a few more steps and peered into the bushes. He recoiled in surprise, then turned and beckoned the others. Come quickly. Someone's tied up. 2 people, all bound up, lying there. Knowing it wasn't a ghost, the boys rushed over. 2 adults lay bound and gagged in the bushes. One, stripped to his shirt and underwear, looked pathetic. Hey, that's Shinozoki's secretary, Kotsura exclaimed, pointing at the man in his shirt. They quickly untied and ungagged the 2 men. The man in his shirt was indeed Imai, Shinozoki's secretary. The other, in Western clothes, was the Shinozoki family chauffeur. As you probably guessed, while carrying out his employer's instructions to fetch the car, Imai had chosen a familiar driver. As they approached Yogenji Temple, 2 masked men had stopped them at gunpoint, tied them up, and stolen the car. One of the masked men had stripped Imai of his clothes and impersonated him, driving off in the stolen vehicle. The boys rushed to the Shinozoki residence with the 2 men and reported the incident. Shinozoki's parents were horrified. Knowing that the 2 men had been captured meant that the car had been driven by the disguised Indians. Midori and Kobayashi were likely at the criminals' hideout, facing unknown dangers. The police were immediately notified. Officers from the local station and the Metropolitan Police Department, including Detective Inspector Nakamura, arrived at the Shinozoki house in a flurry of activity. Fortunately, the car's license plate number was known. An all-points bulletin was issued to every police station in Tokyo. However, the criminals were unlikely to have kept the stolen car. They had probably driven it somewhere far away and abandoned it. Even if the car were found, locating their hideout would be difficult. Meanwhile, the 7 boy detectives, including Shinozoki Hajime, gathered at the gate, trying not to interfere with the adults. They decided they couldn't just stand by idly. They would conduct their own investigation, separate from the police. The 7 boys split up and began to search in the direction the car had gone, interviewing people along the way. They followed the Tamagawa train line, the direction the stolen car had taken. At each intersection, they would split into groups of 2 or 3, going down side streets, asking shopkeepers, deliverymen, and passers-by if they had seen the car. If they found no leads, they would return to the main road and continue to the next intersection. Their search was methodical and persistent. The basement. Back in the basement, Kobayashi and Midori lay still in the darkness, too frightened to move. As their eyes adjusted, they began to make out their surroundings. It was a small, 6-mat-sized concrete cellar. No ordinary house would have such a strange basement. The Indians must have built it after acquiring the house, specifically for their criminal activities. The concrete walls and floor seemed freshly poured. Kobayashi struggled to his feet in the darkness. The only smell was the damp concrete. There were no gaps, no escape route. He remembered being trapped in 20 Faces' basement in Toamagahara. That time, there had been a conveniently placed window in the ceiling, and he had his detective gadgets and his pigeon, Pip, so he had escaped. But this time, there was no window and, having never expected to be captured, he had no gadgets. He wished he had his pen-shaped flashlight, but even without an escape route, he had to free himself. He lay down beside Midori, facing away from her, and using his limited hand movements, began to work on the knots that bound her. Working with bound hands in the darkness was incredibly difficult and time-consuming. But finally, he managed to free Midori's hands. Although only 5 years old, Midori was a clever girl. Understanding what Kobayashi wanted, she removed her own gag, then, despite her tears, crawled behind Kobayashi and fumbled with the knots that bound him. This, too, took a long time, but finally, Kobayashi was free. He removed his gag and sighed in relief. Midori, thank you. You're so smart. Don't cry. The police will come and rescue us soon, so don't worry. Come closer. Kobayashi pulled Midori close and hugged her tightly. Suddenly, they heard heavy footsteps above. The footsteps stopped near the basement entrance, and a strange rattling sound began. They strained their eyes in the darkness. A small opening appeared in the ceiling, and something like a thick pipe, about 20 centimeters in diameter, was inserted. What was going on? As they watched, a gurgling sound began, and suddenly, white water gushed from the pipe like a waterfall. The black demon was going to drown them. The water would quickly fill the small basement. They would drown. The water spread across the floor like a flood. Kobayashi, holding Midori, retreated to a corner away from the cascading water. It rose, covering his feet, his ankles, then slowly crept up his calves. Around this time, two members of the boy search party, Shinozaki and Kotsura, were nearing the desolate field where the Indians' car had been seen. This area was the most deserted, so they had to search it thoroughly. Just before entering the field, they saw a boy, about 7 or 8 years old, walking towards them in the light of a candy store. Shinozaki, look at the badge on that boy's chest. Doesn't it look like our BD badge? Kotsura said. They approached the boy. It was indeed a Boy Detectives Club BD badge. Kobayashi had recently designed the badge as an insignia for the club members. BD stood for Boy Detective. Where did you get that badge? Did you find it somewhere? They asked. The boy, clutching the badge protectively, glared at them. I found it over there. It's mine now. He pointed towards the field. Maybe Kobayashi dropped it on purpose, Shinozaki said. Yes, that's likely. It's an important clue. Kobayashi had designed the BD badge with multiple uses. First, being made of heavy lead, it could be used as a projectile weapon. Second, the soft lead back could be inscribed with a knife to send messages. Third, a string could be attached to the pin to measure depth or distance. Fourth, it could be dropped as a trail marker. Kobayashi had listed 10 uses for the BD badge. The members usually wore the badge inside their clothes, proudly displaying it when necessary. But besides the badge on their chest, they each carried 20 to 30 more in their pockets. Kotsura and Shinozaki, remembering the fourth use, realized Kobayashi had dropped them as a trail for the search party. As you've guessed, the silver coin-like objects Kobayashi had placed on the bumper were these BD badges. His plan had worked. They pulled out their pen-shaped flashlights and rushed to the spot where the boy had found the badge, searching the dark ground. Here's another one, a boy shouted, picking up a muddy badge. That made 3. Great. Let's move on. We're getting closer to Kobayashi. He's so clever. The 7 fireflies moved swiftly across the dark field, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Meanwhile, the water in the basement had risen to about 1 meter. Kobayashi, holding Midori, was barely able to stand. The water was up to his chest. The waterfall from the pipe continued relentlessly. Midori, terrified, had cried herself silent. Don't be afraid. I'm here. I'm a good swimmer, so I'm not afraid of this water. The police will come and rescue us soon. Just hold on tight to me, okay? But the water kept rising. Kobayashi himself was starting to feel anxious. The water was freezing cold, even for spring. Would they drown here, in this unknown basement? He had dropped the badges, but what if the others hadn't passed by? Where was Mr. Akechi? If only he were in Tokyo, he would miraculously appear and save them. The water reached his neck. He could barely stand. He secured Midori on his back, holding her tight, and began to swim in the icy water. At least moving would help him fight the cold, but how long could he last? With the added weight of Midori, he would eventually tire and drown. And what if the water reached the ceiling? He wouldn't be able to swim or even breathe. The vanishing Indians. The 7-boy search party, led by Shinozaki and Kotsura, had found the Indians' escape route, thanks to the BD badges Kobayashi had dropped from the car. They arrived at the gate of the suspicious Western-style house. This is the place, Hashiba whispered to Kotsura, pointing. Look, there are badges inside the gate. You're right. Let's investigate. Everyone, get down. Kotsura whispered. Instantly, the 7 boys vanished. Not by magic, but by dropping flat on the ground in perfect unison. Like black snakes, they crawled through the gate, searching the ground. They found 5 badges between the gate and the house's porch. This is definitely it, one whispered. Kobayashi and Midori must be trapped inside. We have to rescue them. Wait. Don't be hasty, Kotsura said cautiously. Even with all of us, we can't capture those magician-like Indians on our own. If we mess up, it'll be disastrous. Follow my instructions. Kotsura assigned positions around the house. If you see the Indians trying to escape, blow your whistle. Shinozaki, you're the fastest runner, so you'll be our messenger. Run to the nearest phone and call your house. Tell them we've found the hideout and to come quickly. We'll keep watch and make sure they don't escape. Shinozaki nodded and crawled away. The remaining 6 boys took their positions, surrounding the house. But would they be in time to save Kobayashi and Midori? Would the water fill the basement before help arrived? Shinozaki reached a phone and called his father. Detective Inspector Nakamura, who happened to be at the Shinozaki house, immediately set off for the Western-style house with several officers. It took them 20 minutes to arrive. It felt like an eternity. It had been over an hour since the boys had found the first badge. That's how long Kobayashi had been treading water with Midori on his back. Were they still alive? Kotsura ran to meet Inspector Nakamura. The criminals are still inside. No one has escaped, he reported. Nakamura praised the boys, then sent 2 officers around the back of the house. He himself, followed by 2 uniformed officers, walked up to the porch and rang the doorbell. 2 rings, 3 rings. Lights came on inside, footsteps approached, and the doorknob turned. The Indians, unaware that the police were outside, were about to walk right into their trap. Nakamura, gripping his rope, prepared to pounce as soon as the door opened. He expected only 2 Indians. The door opened, revealing not a black-faced Indian, but a smart-looking Japanese gentleman about 30 years old, with a neatly trimmed mustache and a well-tailored suit. He smiled politely. "May I help you?" Nakamura was taken aback. "Are you?" "I'm Haruki, the owner of this house." "Welcome. Actually, I was about to call you myself." This was even more unexpected. "There are supposed to be 2 Indians in this house," Nakamura stammered. "Oh, you already know about the Indians?" "I rented a room to them, unaware they were criminals." "So, the 2 Indians are your tenants?" "Yes, that's right. Please, come in. I'll explain everything." The gentleman led them inside. Nakamura and the 2 officers followed, bewildered. "Here they are. I managed to rescue both of them just in time. They would have drowned if I had been a minute later." The gentleman opened a door, inviting them into a room. Nakamura stepped inside and froze in astonishment. Midori, the kidnapped girl, lay sleeping peacefully in a bed. Kobayashi, dressed in an adult's nightgown, sat in a chair beside the bed. What happened?" Nakamura exclaimed. "It's like this," the gentleman said, offering Nakamura a chair. "I'm a widower, living here alone with my cook. I was out all day and just returned to find the house empty. The Indians I rented a room to, and my cook, were all gone. I searched the house and found my cook tied up and gagged in a corner of the kitchen. He told me the Indians had returned with a small child and taken her to the basement. He had heard the child crying. I rushed to the basement and, to my horror, found it filled with water. This young man, Kobayashi, was swimming in the water, carrying the little girl on his back. They were about to drown. Of course, I immediately rescued them. The little girl had a high fever, so I put her to bed. From Kobayashi, I learned what had happened. I was about to call your office and the girl's family when you arrived." Nakamura sighed in relief. "Is that so? I'm glad they are safe. But are you sure the Indians are gone? Did you search thoroughly?" "I did, but perhaps you should search the house again, just to be sure." "All right, we'll do that." Nakamura called the 2 officers he had stationed outside and, along with the other 2, they searched the house thoroughly, every closet, every corner, even the attic and under the floorboards. But there was no sign of the Indians. It was baffling. In the 20 minutes between Hashiba seeing the Indians through the window and the police arriving, the 2 Indians had vanished into thin air. Nakamura reported the situation to headquarters. An all-points bulletin for the 2 Indians was issued. But days passed, and they were nowhere to be found. Had they not only vanished but also flown back to their homeland using some magical power? 4 mysteries. 2 days after the Indians disappeared from the Western-style house, Akechi, who had been away on a case in Tohoku, returned to his Tokyo office. He immediately summoned Kobayashi to his study, eager to hear about the events that had transpired during his absence. Kobayashi had fully recovered. Midori's fever had subsided the next day, and she was playing happily with her parents. Kobayashi recounted the incident in detail. "Sir, I don't understand what happened. I don't believe the Indians used magic. There must be some trickery we haven't figured out. Please, sir, tell me what you think. I've been eager to hear your opinion. Kobayashi regarded Akechi as an omniscient being, believing nothing was beyond his understanding. Well, I've been thinking about it after reading the news. It's not something I can explain immediately, even if you're so eager. Akechi chuckled, leaning back in his armchair, crossing his long legs, and lighting his favorite Egyptian cigarette. This was his habit when deep in thought. He smoked 1, 2, 3 cigarettes, filling the room with purple smoke and the aroma of Egyptian tobacco. Oh, yes, come here for a moment. Akechi stood and walked towards a large map of Tokyo on the wall, beckoning Kobayashi. Where is Yogenji Temple located? Kobayashi pointed to the temple's location on the map. And where is Shinozoki's house? Kobayashi pointed again, just as I suspected. Kobayashi, do you understand the significance of this? Yogenji Temple and the Shinozoki house appear to be in different neighborhoods and far apart, but they are actually adjacent. Judging by this map, there might be 2 or 3 houses between them, but the distance is no more than 10 meters. Akechi smiled enigmatically. Oh, you're right. I didn't realize that. Since they seem to be in different neighborhoods, I assumed they were far apart. But sir, I don't understand what that means. It's nothing. Just think about it. Consider it homework. Akechi returned to his armchair and leaned back again. By the way, Kobayashi, there are several inexplicable aspects to this case. Let's list them. This is the first lesson in detective work. Identifying the unusual points in a case and trying to interpret them. First, the black demon appeared all over Tokyo, terrifying people. Why would the culprit do such a foolish thing? The goal was to steal the jewel and kidnap Midori. By appearing all over town and attracting media attention, the culprit was practically saying, "Look, I'm a black-skinned person. Beware." It's like he was deliberately raising the alarm, and there's more. The black demon gradually closed in on the Shinozoki house, continuing to show itself. It even mistakenly kidnapped 2 other girls. For a culprit meticulous enough to travel all the way from India, knowing the jewel was at the Shinozoki house, these seem like significant blunders. He should have known what Midori looked like. Don't you think these points are strange, Kobayashi? Don't they seem contradictory? Yes, now that you mention it, it's very strange. It's as if he was advertising himself, saying, "I'm an Indian, and I'm going to kidnap Shinozoki's daughter." Kobayashi, realizing this for the first time, looked up at Akechi in surprise. Exactly. The culprit was deliberately drawing attention to things he should have been concealing. Kobayashi, do you understand the meaning of this? Akechi smiled mysteriously. Kobayashi, unable to grasp his mentor's thoughts, felt a chill. The second mystery is the Indians' ninja-like disappearances. Once at Yogenji Temple, once in the Shinozoki garden, and then again at the Western-style house. You're familiar with this, aren't you? That night, 6 boy detectives were watching the house. Their surveillance was reliable, wasn't it? They wouldn't have missed anything, would they? Kotsura said they were very careful. They might be elementary school students, but they're quite reliable. I trust their account. Who was watching the front gate? Kotsura and another boy, Ohara. 2 of them. Did they say they saw Haruki, the owner of the house, return? Sir, that's the strange thing. They said they didn't see him. They took their positions while the Indians were still upstairs, so Haruki must have returned later. He would have had to pass right in front of Kotsura and Ohara. He wouldn't have used the back entrance, would he? And the boys watching the back entrance didn't see anyone either. This is getting interesting. What do you make of this? Did you tell the police? Kotsura told Inspector Nakamura, but he didn't believe him. He said since they had missed the 2 Indians escaping, it wasn't surprising they missed Haruki arriving. He thinks children's accounts are unreliable. Kobayashi sounded indignant. Ha ha ha. That's interesting. He thinks because they missed the Indians leaving, they must have missed Haruki arriving as well. Ha ha ha, Akechi laughed heartily. By the way, you were rescued from the basement by Haruki, weren't you? You must have seen him clearly. He wasn't an Indian in disguise, was he? No, of course not. His skin was definitely Japanese. You can't fake that with makeup. I was in the same room with him for a while, so I'm certain. The police must have investigated Haruki's background. Yes, they did, and they found nothing suspicious. He's been living in that house for 3 months and is acquainted with the local police officer. Oh, he is he? This is getting even more interesting. Akechi's expression was one of amusement. Now, the third question. You said that when you and Midori were about to get into the car at the Shinozaki gate, the secretary, Imai, opened the door for you. Did you see his face clearly? Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Yes, I saw his face clearly. It was definitely Imai. But how could he turn into a black demon shortly after the car started moving? That's the strangest part. But then, that same Imai was tied up in Yogenji Temple's graveyard. That means there were 2 Imais. Or rather, 3. The one in the graveyard, the one who opened the car door and sat in the front seat, and the one who turned into a black demon. 3 Imais. Yes, that's right. I don't understand at all. It's like a dream. Talking with Akechi made the strangeness of the case even more apparent to Kobayashi. He no longer felt like dismissing it as magic. He felt as if he were caught in a spell himself. Kobayashi, think back. Did you see the backs of their necks in the car? The back of the driver's neck and the man in the passenger seat? Akechi asked. The back of their necks? You mean this area? Kobayashi touched the back of his ear. Yes. Did you see the color of their skin there? No, I didn't notice. They were both wearing hats pulled low, covering their ears. Good. You were observant. That's important. Now, the fourth question. Why didn't the culprit kill Midori? What? They intended to kill her. They tried to drown me and her. But they didn't, did they? Akechi smiled enigmatically. Think carefully. The Indians tied up the cook but didn't do anything to Haruki, the owner. He was out, and they didn't know when he would return. He might have discovered you and Midori in the basement and rescued you. Their entire plan would have been ruined. Yet, they didn't seem to care. They didn't even stay to see if Midori had drowned. They simply abandoned you and escaped. Compared to their meticulous planning, this seems like a major oversight. And as you see, both you and Midori survived. It makes no sense. Why would they go through all that trouble? Kobayashi, do you see? The culprit never intended to kill Midori. Ha ha ha. It was all a charade. Akechi laughed, but Kobayashi was still lost. What was his mentor thinking? He felt a growing unease. By the way, Kobayashi, one more thing. You said you saw Haruki's face clearly. Perhaps you... Akechi whispered something in Kobayashi's ear. What? Kobayashi's face turned pale. No, that can't be. He recoiled as if warding off a ghost. Don't be afraid. I might be wrong. But when I consider these 4 questions, they all point to one thing. But I can't be sure until I confirm it. I'm going to meet Haruki today. What's his phone number? Akechi looked up Haruki's number and dialed. What did Akechi whisper to Kobayashi? Why was Kobayashi so terrified? Akechi said the answer to the 4 questions would reveal a terrifying truth. Try to solve these mysteries yourself. But they are complex, and the answer is unexpected. The next chapter reveals the solution and the true face of the monster, the inverted head. Akechi called Haruki, the owner of the house where the Indians had rented a room, and asked for a meeting. Haruki said he was busy during the day, but could see him at 7 that evening. Akechi left the office immediately, saying he had some inquiries to make before meeting Haruki. Kobayashi begged to go with him, but Akechi told him to stay and rest, as he was still recovering. We'll find out later what Akechi did that day. Let's continue the story from the point where he arrives at Haruki's house at 7 o'clock. Haruki, a young gentleman, greeted Akechi at the door with a warm smile. Welcome, Mr. Akechi. I've heard so much about you. I've always wanted to meet you and hear your stories. I'm honored you've come to visit me. Please, come in. He led Akechi to a luxurious drawing room on the 2nd floor. They sat facing each other across a table. A servant in a white jacket, about 30 years old, brought in tea. I lost my wife and live alone. It's just me and my cook. This house is too big for just 2 people, So I rented a room to those Indians. It turned out to be a terrible mistake. But they had credible references, so I trusted them. Haruki said apologetically, watching the cook as he left the room. Akechi got down to business. I came to hear your account of that night. The most puzzling thing is the disappearance of the two Indians. As you know, some local boys have formed a detective club. They confirmed that two Indians were in a second-floor room here about 20 minutes before Inspector Nakamura arrived. It's strange that they were gone when you returned, even though you arrived before the police. During that time, 6 boys were watching the house. They were stationed at the front gate, the back gate, and around the walls. If the Indians had escaped, they wouldn't have been able to avoid the children. Haruki nodded. Yes, I find that very strange myself. Perhaps they used some sort of magic, something we can't comprehend. But there's something else. You returned between the time the children confirmed the Indians' presence and the police's arrival. By then, the children were at their posts. You entered through the front gate, didn't you? Yes, I did. 2 boys were watching the gate. Did you see them? They were standing by the gate posts like sentries. No, I didn't notice them. Perhaps they had stepped away for a moment. Even with careful watching, they're just elementary school students. They're not always reliable. Children can be surprisingly observant. When they're focused on something, they don't get distracted like adults. I actually find them more reliable than adults in situations like this. Before coming here, I had several errands to run. One of them was to interview the boys who were watching the gate. They insisted they never left their posts and never looked away. Children don't lie. So, did they say they saw me? No, they said they didn't. They're certain no one entered or left the gate. Akechi stared intently at Haruki. Oh dear, it seems I've used magic as well. How amusing. Ha ha ha. Haruki's laughter sounded forced. Ha ha ha. Akechi joined in, but there was a sharp edge to his laughter. Subtract 2, then add 2. Do you understand the meaning of this? You end up where you started. Simple arithmetic. Akechi shifted the subject. By the way, I found something interesting today at Yogenji Temple and in the Shinozaki Garden. Guess what? A secret underground tunnel connecting the two properties, Yogenji Temple and the Shinozaki House, appear to be in different neighborhoods and far apart, but their backyards are separated by only a small, 10-meter-wide empty lot. The Indians exploited this misconception of distance. They built a tunnel and created the illusion of vanishing into thin air. In the Yogenji graveyard, there was an entrance to the tunnel hidden beneath a tombstone. In the Shinozaki garden, the entrance was covered with a board and soil with grass growing on top. It was perfectly camouflaged. The area was dimly lit and surrounded by bushes. Clever, isn't it? When the black demon vanished in the graveyard, it escaped through the tunnel to the Shinozaki house. And when it stole the jewel, it escaped through the tunnel back to the temple. Since the two locations appear to be in different neighborhoods, no one would suspect a connection. Ha ha ha. That's how they performed their magic. Haruki looked surprised. He tried to hide it, saying defensively, but why would they go through so much trouble just to steal a jewel? There must have been easier ways. You're right. They went to unnecessary lengths. But there are other, even greater inconsistencies. That's what's so peculiar, and so interesting, about this case. Akechi paused, looking at Haruki intently. Greater inconsistencies? The Indians' public appearances, swimming naked in the Sumida River, roaming around Tokyo, causing a commotion. And then, mistakenly kidnapping 2 other girls. Why would they do such pointless things? What do you think, Haruki? I don't know, Haruki replied, his face pale, fidgeting slightly. Don't you? Let me tell you what I think. They wanted to advertise themselves. They wanted to tell everyone, or rather, Shinozaki, I'm a black Indian. I'm going to kidnap your daughter. They wanted to convince him that the curse of the jewel was real and that Indians had come from India to retrieve it. But why? Why would they advertise themselves? If real Indians were seeking revenge, they would try to remain hidden, wouldn't they? It's completely backwards. So, the answer must also be backwards. Backwards? What do you mean? Haruki asked, startled. At that very moment, the word backwards manifested itself outside the window. A human face appeared in the top corner of the window pane. It was upside down, backwards. The man, hanging upside down in the darkness outside, his hair dangling down, his face flushed, peered into the room with inverted eyes. How could a face be hanging upside down outside the window? Even stranger was Haruki's reaction. He wasn't surprised. He even exchanged glances with the face. The inverted face winked and vanished. Who was that? The face looked familiar. It was Haruki's cook, the servant who had brought in the tea. But how could the cook be hanging upside down outside the window? The window was behind Akechi, so he hadn't seen the face. Don't you feel a sense of foreboding? Is Akechi in danger? Is there some sinister plot unfolding in this house? The rooftop phantom. Unaware, Akechi continued. By backwards, I mean the culprit is the opposite of what he pretended to be. The culprit isn't a black Indian, but a Japanese person. Kidnapping Shinozuki's daughter was just a ruse to make it seem like the curse of the jewel. He never intended to kill her. That's why both Midori and Kobayashi are safe. If he had wanted to kill them, why would he go through all that trouble and then abandon them without confirming their deaths? It was all a diversion. And judging by the elaborate scheme, the culprit must be someone well known. Don't you agree? So, you're saying the culprit isn't Indian? Haruki asked, his voice strangely hoarse. Yes, I believe the culprit is Japanese. Akechi smiled, staring intently at Haruki. But there were Indians. Even if you don't believe I rented a room to them, the children saw them upstairs. And Kobayashi and the girl said the driver and the passenger in the car turned into black demons. They saw it with their own eyes. Ha ha ha. What if it was all a trick? Kobayashi said the passenger was definitely Shinozuki's secretary, Imai, when he got into the car. How could he suddenly turn into a black demon? And not only that, but around the same time, the real Imai was tied up in Yogenji Temple's graveyard. One Imai can't be in two places at once. This is what I find so fascinating, Haruki. I believe this is the key to solving this case. Haruki smiled strangely, feigning admiration. As expected of the great detective. You've thought this through. Have you solved the mystery? Yes, I have. Really? They stared at each other in silence, their expressions serious, as if trying to see into each other's minds. Explain, Haruki said, his face pale, beads of sweat on his forehead. The transformation in the car was a simple trick. While the car was moving, and out of sight of the passengers in the back, they simply lowered their heads and quickly painted their faces and hands black with some kind of paint, probably soot. It's a simple trick. There's nothing easier than disguising oneself as a dark-skinned person. I asked Kobayashi about the color of their skin at the back of their necks, which would have been visible from behind, but he said their collars and hats completely covered their skin. And how do you explain the two Imais? Haruki's voice was strained, as if challenging Akechi. You seem very concerned. Ha ha ha. There's only one explanation. The culprit tied up Imai, stole his clothes, and impersonated him. But could the culprit truly make himself look exactly like Imai? It's almost impossible. But there's one person in Japan who can do the impossible. Who? 20 Faces. Akechi uttered the unexpected name, staring into Haruki's eyes. A tense silence hung in the air for 30 seconds. Who is 20 Faces? You all know, of course. The master of disguise, said to have 20 different faces. The infamous jewel thief who should be in prison. Well, 20 faces, it's been a while. Akechi said casually, patting Haruki's shoulder. What are you talking about? Are you saying I'm 20 faces? Ha. Don't play coy. I just came from the prison. The person they have there is a fake 20 faces. Why do you think I've been going on and on like this? I was observing your reactions. I was testing you. You turned pale and started fidgeting as I spoke. Look at you, sweating profusely. That's your confession. Subtract 2, then add 2, and you're back where you started. You and your cook impersonated Imai and the driver, then disguised yourselves as two Indians to fool the boy detectives, even going so far as to stage a fake prayer ritual. The two Indians simply reverted to you and your cook. No matter how carefully the boys watched, they wouldn't have seen any Indians escaping, nor would they have seen you entering. It was a two-man show, not a four-man show, but I'm impressed that you stuck to 20 Faces' principle of not harming anyone. You never intended to hurt Kobayashi and Midori, did you? 20 faces burst into laughter. You're amazing, Akechi Kogoro. You figured it all out. But you know what? This just proves your own blunder. Do you understand? You were so proud of capturing me at the museum. The public cheered. But it was all a lie. You caught one of my men, disguised as the museum director, whom you mistook for me. I set the trap, and you walked right into it. It was a banquet prepared just for you. It's understandable. I have no fixed face. Even I forget what my real face looks like. But did you really think 20 faces, would be caught so easily, running around like a child and being tackled by a bunch of kids? That's not how 20 faces ends his career. Let's forget about the past. In the end, I won. You might have fooled everyone with your Indian charade, but I saw through it. Akechi remained calm, smiling faintly. The Indian charade? That was fun. I overheard Shinozaki talking about the curse of the jewel, and I wanted it. So, I devised that charade to get the jewel and make a fool of everyone. If the culprit was Indian, no one would suspect 20 faces. And I couldn't just steal the jewel. It's too valuable. The police would be all over me. So, what are you going to do with me? It was rather reckless of you to come to my hideout alone. I'm afraid you've walked into a trap. You're not leaving this room. 20 faces glared at Akechi with a menacing expression. Ha ha ha. 20 faces, why don't you take a look behind you? 20 faces turned around sharply. Standing in the open doorway were 5 uniformed police officers. Damn it. You got me. 20 faces staggered back, then lunged towards the window. Don't be foolish. The house is surrounded by 50 police officers. Oh, is that so? Well played. But there's one place you can't reach. This is my trump card. Guess where it is? Here. With that, 20 faces' upper body lunged out the window and disappeared into the darkness. It was so swift, like a mechanical doll flipping over. What had he done? Had he jumped? But Akechi wasn't lying. The house was surrounded. There was no escape. Akechi rushed to the window and looked down. Strangely, there was no one there. Despite the darkness, the garden below was dimly lit by the lights from the downstairs windows, but 20 faces was nowhere to be seen. Hey, up here. Have you forgotten the concept of backwards? I didn't jump down, I ascended. The devil's ascension. Ha ha ha. Akechi looked up, startled. 20 faces was climbing a rope hanging from the roof, like an acrobat. The devil's ascension indeed. Unseen by Akechi, the cook stood on the roof, pulling the rope. With the combined force of 20 faces climbing and the cook pulling, he quickly reached the roof and disappeared. The cook's face at the window had been a signal that the rope was ready. He had probably tied himself to the rope and hung upside down outside the window. The master thief vanished from Akechi's sight. But what was he planning to do on the roof? The house was surrounded by open fields. He couldn't escape by jumping from roof to roof like in the city. And the house was surrounded by police. He was trapped. There was no food or water on the roof. He couldn't stay there forever. If it rained, he and the cook would be drenched. What happened? Did he escape onto the roof? The 5 officers who had been waiting at the entrance rushed to Akechi's side. Yes, he did something foolish. We just need to surround the house and wait. He'll surrender eventually. He's as good as caught. The officers rushed downstairs and relayed the news to the police outside. But they had already seen 20 faces on the roof. On Inspector Nakamura's orders, 50 officers stormed the grounds, surrounding the house. 2 officers ran off and returned shortly with a fire truck. A mechanical ladder extended towards the roof. Officers climbed the ladder, flashlights in hand, ready to capture the thieves on the rooftop. 20 faces and the cook stood near the peak of the roof, holding hands. The officers, surrounding them, cautiously approached, ropes and pistols at the ready. Ha ha ha. A maniacal laughter echoed through the night. The thieves, facing capture, burst into laughter. Ha ha ha. This is hilarious. What a magnificent view. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, they keep coming. The roof is almost overflowing with police. Be careful, gentlemen. Don't slip. The roof is wet with dew. If you fall from here, you'll die. Oh, Isn't that Inspector Nakamura? Good to see you. It's been a while. 20 faces taunted them. Indeed, it is I, Nakamura. It seems your time is up. Stop your foolish bravado and surrender peacefully. Ha ha. This is ridiculous. Surrender. Do you think I'm trapped? I'm not caught yet. My work is just beginning. I won't be caught for a mere trinket like that jewel. Nakamura, let me ask you a riddle. How will we escape from this roof? Can you solve it? Ha ha ha. 20 faces is a magician. Try to guess what magic I'll use. Was he bluffing? He didn't seem to be. He seemed confident he could escape. But how could he escape from a rooftop surrounded by police, the devil's ascension? Inspector Nakamura ignored 20 faces' taunts. He assumed it was meaningless bravado. He ordered his men to launch the final assault. A dozen officers charged towards the two thieves. The circle of police on the roof tightened. The two thieves stood at the peak of the roof, holding hands, with nowhere else to go now. Nakamura shouted, leaping towards them. Other officers followed, as if trying to crush the thieves, but then, something incredible happened. As Nakamura pounced, the two thieves vanished. The officers, in the darkness, accidentally tackled each other in a chaotic melee. Nakamura's furious roar brought them to their senses. They realized they had been fighting each other, not the thieves. Lights. Lights. Someone get a flashlight. Nakamura yelled, but the officers had thrown their flashlights aside when they charged. They fumbled around in the darkness. Suddenly, the rooftop was bathed in a bright light, as if it were daytime. A searchlight, someone shouted. A truck parked inside the gate had a small searchlight mounted on it. Two technicians in work clothes were directing the powerful beam towards the roof. It was a mobile searchlight from the Metropolitan Police Department. When Nakamura learned that the thieves had escaped to the roof, he had sent a messenger to the fire station and another to police headquarters to request a searchlight. The technicians had quickly connected the searchlight to a nearby power line. The officers, blinded by the light, searched for the thieves. Their eyes moved from the roof towards the sky. There they are, an officer shouted, pointing at the dark sky. The officers on the roof, and the dozens of officers on the ground, gasped in astonishment. 20 faces was ascending. The devil was ascending. A large, black, balloon-like object was rising into the night sky. It was a hot air balloon, painted completely black. Twice the size of an advertising balloon, it was a black monster. Two small figures were visible in the basket beneath the balloon. 20 faces, in his black suit, and the cook, in his white jacket. They looked down at the scene below, as if mocking the police. The crowd realized 20 faces' final trick. His trump card had been the hot air balloon. What an ingenious idea. No ordinary thief would think of such a thing. 20 faces had prepared the black balloon in advance. He had filled it with gas and tethered it to the roof before meeting Akechi. Being black, it was invisible in the night sky, even to the police on the roof. The officers, expecting an escape on foot, had focused their attention on the rooftop, not the sky above. Even if they had looked up, it would have been difficult to see a black balloon in the dark night. When cornered, the thieves had jumped into the balloon's basket and cut the tether. It had happened so quickly in the darkness that they seemed to have vanished. Nakamura stamped his foot in frustration, but there was nothing he could do. The 50 officers just stared at the sky, shouting incoherently. 20 faces' black balloon rose into the night sky, leaving the astonished crowd below. The searchlight followed the balloon, creating a large white beam in the dark sky. The balloon grew smaller and smaller as it ascended. The figures in the basket were no longer visible. Soon, even the basket itself was barely discernible. Finally, the balloon became a tiny black dot, flickering in the searchlight beam, before disappearing completely into the vast darkness, the end of the mysterious balloon. News of 20 faces' aerial escape spread like wildfire. The police and the press were in an uproar. An emergency meeting was held at police headquarters. It was decided to track the balloon with searchlights. Soon, a dozen searchlight beams crisscrossed the sky above Tokyo. It was like wartime. Searchlights shone from the rooftops of tall buildings. Helicopters from the police and news agencies were on standby, ready to take off at daybreak, but despite the extensive search, the black balloon couldn't be found. Low clouds had covered the sky during the night. Perhaps the balloon had entered the clouds. The aerial search was fruitless. The next morning, people near Kumagaya City in Saitama Prefecture spotted a large, black, balloon-like object floating in the clear blue sky. The morning newspapers had reported the incident in Tokyo, so people immediately recognized the black balloon carried by a southeasterly wind that had started blowing during the night. The balloon had drifted here. It's 20 faces. 20 faces is flying. The news spread like wildfire. People poured out of their houses, onto the streets, and onto rooftops, staring at the black balloon in the sky. A strong wind was pushing the balloon northwest at a considerable speed. It passed over Kumagaya City, heading towards Gunma Prefecture. The Kumagaya police could only watch in frustration. They couldn't shoot it down with anti-aircraft guns, nor could they use helicopters to attack it with machine guns. They could only watch. But when the news reached Tokyo, the newspapers immediately dispatched their helicopters. Even if they couldn't capture the thief, they could at least follow the balloon, take photos, and report on the incident. 4 helicopters took off from Tokyo, one after another. They quickly caught up with the balloon near the border of Kumagaya and Takasaki. An unprecedented aerial pageant began in the skies above southern Gunma Prefecture. The 4 helicopters surrounded the balloon. But the balloon, with no propeller, was at the mercy of the wind. 20 faces was as good as captured. However, the helicopters couldn't capture the balloon directly. They could only fly alongside it, keeping pace with the wind. People in the towns and villages below stopped their work and rushed outside, staring at the sky, shouting excitedly. Farmers in the fields dropped their tools. Children's faces peered from classroom windows. Passengers on passing trains craned their necks to look up. The 4 helicopters maintained a diamond formation around the black balloon, flying in perfect synchronization. Occasionally, a helicopter would swoop close to the balloon, as if to intimidate the thief. What was 20 Faces thinking? Did he still believe he could escape? Near Takasaki, 20 Faces' luck ran out. The black balloon suddenly began to descend rapidly, as if losing buoyancy. It seemed to be leaking gas. Wrinkles appeared on the surface of the balloon. It was a terrifying sight. Minute by minute, the wrinkles deepened, and the balloon deflated like a punctured ball. The strong wind continued to push it towards Takasaki. The 4 helicopters followed, tilting downwards, maintaining their diamond formation. On a hill overlooking Takasaki, a giant concrete statue of Kannon, the Buddhist goddess of mercy, stood tall against the sky. A crowd had gathered in the plaza below to watch the strange aerial spectacle. They witnessed a scene unlike anything in an adventure movie. 4 helicopters descended rapidly from the blue sky, herding a wrinkled, black monster as it plummeted towards the ground. The damaged balloon approached the head of the giant Kannon statue. It seemed as if the wind would blow it into the statue's face. Whoa! Whoa! The crowd below gasped. The balloon grazed the face of the Kannon statue, brushed against its chest, and, like a wounded black bird, fell to the ground. It landed in front of the retreating crowd, dragging the basket 50 meters before coming to a stop. The 2 figures inside lay motionless, apparently unconscious. The 4 helicopters, having witnessed the end of the chase, circled once more before rising into the sky and returning to Tokyo. Police officers pushed through the crowd and approached the black balloon. The Takasaki police, having been notified of 20 Faces' escape, had correctly guessed that the balloon was him. They had dispatched a patrol car to the Kannon statue. As soon as the balloon began to descend, the officers reached the overturned basket and tried to pull out the 2 unconscious figures. But then, something strange happened. The officers dropped the figures as if they had been burned. The figures landed on the ground with a thud. What's this? Dummies. Dummies in a balloon? The officers stared at each other in disbelief. The thieves they had captured were not human, but wax mannequins, like those displayed in shop windows, dressed in a black suit and a white jacket. 20 Faces' cunning knew no bounds. He had fooled everyone: the police, the press, the people of Tokyo, and the people of Kumagaya and Takasaki. The 4 news helicopters had chased a decoy, but that wasn't all. 20 Faces had one last trick up his sleeve. Hey, there's a letter here. An officer noticed an envelope in the pocket of the 20 Faces dummy. The envelope was addressed to police officers. On the back was the signature 20 Faces. The letter inside read, "Ha ha ha. How amusing. You've been completely fooled. Now you know the depth of 20 Faces' genius. I can picture you chasing after that black balloon, and when you finally caught it, it was just dummies. It's hilarious. I feel a little sorry for Akechi. He did well to uncover my true identity, but it backfired spectacularly. If he hadn't interfered, I wouldn't have caused such a commotion, but it's too late now. Thanks to Akechi, 20 Faces can operate openly again. I won't hold back. I'll be back in action soon. Give my regards to Akechi. Tell him to watch closely for my next grand performance. Farewell. 20 Faces had anticipated his capture and prepared the letter and the dummies in advance. The officer who read the letter was speechless. What audacity! What a brazen monster! Even the great detective Akechi Kogoro had been outwitted. He had fallen for the black balloon trick. So, how did 20 Faces escape from the roof? Later investigations revealed that the roof had a hidden trapdoor leading to a secret attic room. When cornered by Nakamura, he had cut the balloon's tether, tossed the dummies into the basket, and hidden in the attic. It was dark, and even the experienced Nakamura hadn't noticed the trapdoor. Everyone had been so focused on the balloon that they hadn't considered the possibility of a hidden room. If it had been just the attic room, it would have been discovered immediately. If someone vanished from a rooftop, the first thing anyone would suspect would be a trapdoor. But the black balloon, such a brilliant and unexpected trick, had completely diverted everyone's attention. And the dummies in the basket had reinforced the illusion. Once the balloon was gone, the police surrounding the house left. Even Akechi, lulled into a false sense of security, had departed after everyone was gone. 20 Faces and his accomplice changed clothes in the attic, climbed down a rope, and walked out the front gate. What a brilliant trick! 20 Faces has returned. He has thrown down the gauntlet to Akechi Kogoro. Of course, Akechi won't back down. A new battle of wits has begun between the detective and the phantom thief. A deadly serious duel. The Golden Pagoda. 20 Faces had revealed himself. He would now operate openly as the phantom thief, targeting jewels and art. The people of Tokyo, reading the news, were even more terrified than they had been by the rumors of the Black Demon. Wealthy art collectors were especially worried, unable to sleep at night. After all, this was a thief who had attempted to steal from a national museum. 10 days after the balloon incident, a Tokyo evening newspaper published a shocking article. Our editorial department received a letter from the phantom thief 20 Faces this morning. He enclosed the advertising fee and requested that we publish the full text of his letter in our advertisement section. However, our newspaper cannot publish advertisements for thieves. We naturally declined his bizarre request. The letter stated that 20 Faces intends to steal the famous Golden Pagoda from the Otorai clock store on the night of the 25th of this month. As past examples have shown, 20 Faces always keeps his promises. Let Akechi Kogoro and others be warned. The article then described the history of the Golden Pagoda, 20 Faces' past exploits, and Akechi's investigations, even including a large photo of the detective. What was this famous Golden Pagoda? Let me explain. The Otorai clock store was a long-established business in the Chuo ward, with a tall clock tower. Its owner, Otorai Seizo, was an eccentric man and a devout follower of Sensoji Temple. He commissioned a miniature replica of the 5-storied pagoda at Sensoji, made entirely of pure gold. The Golden Pagoda was about 75 centimeters tall, with a base of about 12 centimeters square. It was an exquisite replica of the Sensoji Pagoda, down to the smallest detail. It was solid gold, weighing over 80 kilograms and worth approximately 5 million yen. Around the time the Golden Pagoda was completed, a rival clock store in Ginza was robbed of a 2 million yen gold bar. Worried about a similar theft, Otorai moved the pagoda from his shop display to a secure room in the back, implementing various security measures. The room was a tenmat Japanese-style room. All the shoji screens and sliding doors were replaced with solid wooden doors, each with multiple locks. The keys were held only by Otorai and his manager, the elderly Kadono. This was the first line of defense. Even if a thief managed to open the doors, a second line of defense awaited. Pressure sensors were installed beneath the tatami mats. Stepping on any mat would trigger alarms throughout the house, but there was a third, even more formidable, line of defense. The Golden Pagoda was displayed in the alcove, encased in a wooden frame about 60 centimeters square and 130 centimeters tall. The frame, which would normally have glass panels, was left open, allowing visitors to see the pagoda clearly. However, hidden in the four corner posts of the frame was an infrared security system. 12 infrared beams, 3 in each post, created an invisible web around the pagoda. If anyone reached for the pagoda, breaking an infrared beam, alarms would sound, and pistols hidden in the top and bottom corners of the frame would fire towards the intruder. 8 small pistols, loaded with real bullets, were positioned like a miniature fortress. Otorai could have simply locked the pagoda in a safe, but he wanted to display his prized possession. So, he devised this elaborate system, which he could disable with a hidden button when showing the pagoda to trusted guests. The valuable golden pagoda itself was impressive, but the rumors of its elaborate security system added to its fame. The Otorai clock store kept the system a secret, but rumors spread, amplified by word of mouth. People said that entering the room would cause their legs to tremble and their bodies to go numb. Some even claimed a steel robot guarded the pagoda, crushing any intruders. These rumors, reported in newspapers, made the Golden Pagoda even more famous. This is what attracted 20 Faces. He had once stolen 10 million yen worth of art in a single night, so the Golden Pagoda itself probably wasn't his primary target. He was more interested in the challenge of defeating the infamous security system. He wanted to steal the pagoda, outwit the police and Akechi, and have the last laugh. Akechi read the newspaper article. The next day, Otorai visited his office, requesting protection for the Golden Pagoda. Akechi accepted the case. In the previous incident, Inspector Nakamura and the police had fallen for the balloon trick, but Akechi also bore some responsibility. He was determined to redeem himself and capture 20 Faces. A look of firm resolve hardened his features. What would happen? What magic would 20 Faces use to steal the Golden Pagoda? Could Akechi stop him? It was a duel between detective and phantom thief, a battle of wits, a contest neither could afford to lose. The mysterious girl. Kobayashi was anxious. He prayed for Akechi's success. "Sir, please let me help. I'll do anything," he pleaded, his face earnest. "Thank you, Kobayashi. I'm lucky to have an assistant like you." Akechi stood and placed a hand on Kobayashi's shoulder. "Actually, I do have a task for you. It's quite a responsibility. Only you can do it." "Yes, sir. I'll do anything you ask." "What is it?" Kobayashi's cheeks flushed with excitement. "It's this," Akechi whispered in Kobayashi's ear. "What? Me? Can I do that?" "Yes, you can. I'm sure you can. My wife will help you with the preparations. Just do your best." What had Akechi asked him to do? It must have been something difficult. What was it? Meanwhile, at the Otorai clock store, panic reigned. 10 employees took turns keeping watch. Plainclothes detectives were stationed outside. And they had hired Akechi. Security was at its highest level, Otorai thought, with the 3 layers of security and the constant vigilance of my employees, the police, and Akechi, even the magician 20 Faces won't stand a chance. My store is an impenetrable fortress. He felt a surge of confidence. Try it if you dare, 20 Faces. But as the days passed, his confidence wavered. Assurance turned into anxiety, anxiety into fear. He became increasingly agitated. 20 Faces continued to send taunts, reminding Otorai of the impending theft. The newspaper article had been published on the 16th. There were 9 days until the 25th. But 20 Faces sent daily reminders. 8 days left. 7 days left. First, a postcard arrived with a large 8 written on it. The next day, a phone call. A raspy voice said, 7 days left, and hung up. The following morning, the employees discovered a large 6 written in chalk on the shop's display window. The taunts escalated. Postcard, phone call, shop window. What would be next? The inside of the store. Then, the next morning, the employees discovered something even more unsettling. All the clocks in the store, which had been ticking away the previous night, had stopped. And every single one, from alarm clocks to cuckoo clocks, from marble mantle clocks to the large grandfather clock in the front, had its hands pointing to exactly 5 o'clock. It was 20 Faces' message, 5 days left. He had infiltrated the store, but how? The doors were locked, detectives were outside, and employees were on watch inside. How had he entered and stopped all the clocks without being seen? The employees were questioned, but no one was suspicious. Had 20 faces slipped through a crack in the shutters? Had he turned into some invisible gas and floated around, stopping the clocks one by one? The next morning, Otorai was awakened by a maid's scream. It came from the direction of the Golden Pagoda room. He jumped out of bed and rushed to the room with several employees. A young maid, hired just 4 days earlier, stood trembling, pointing at the wooden doors. A large 4 was written in chalk on the doors. 20 faces had reached the inner sanctum. Otorai, fearing the worst, unlocked the doors and rushed to the alcove. The Golden Pagoda was still there, gleaming. Even 20 faces couldn't defeat the 3 layers of security, but with the thief so close, Otorai couldn't relax. The guards and the detectives were useless against this ghost-like phantom thief. "I'll sleep in this room from tonight," he declared. That night, he had his bedding brought into the room and lay down, keeping watch over the pagoda. 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, midnight. Time seemed to crawl. Finally, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. The witching hour. The trams had stopped running, and traffic had thinned. Even the busy shopping street was silent. Occasionally, he heard footsteps outside the wooden doors. The employees were making their rounds. The store's clock struck 3. Hours seemed to pass. Finally, 4 o'clock. He didn't come. It's past midnight. It's the 26th. He missed his deadline. Otorai sighed in relief, chuckling, indeed. Even 20 faces couldn't breach our defenses. Serves him right. Kodono, the manager, sneered just then. A strange, raspy voice echoed through the room. "Don't celebrate too soon. Have you forgotten that impossible isn't in 20 faces' vocabulary?" It was an eerie voice, like something emanating from a grave. "Kodono, did you say something?" Otorai looked around nervously. "No, sir. But I thought I heard something strange." Kodono looked around too. "This is odd. Don't let your guard down. Check the corridor. Is someone outside?" Otorai's face was pale. Kodono, seemingly less afraid, unlocked the wooden doors and checked the corridor. "There's no one there. How strange." As he was about to close the doors, the raspy voice echoed again. "What are you looking for?" "I'm here. Right here." It sounded muffled, as if coming from underwater. "Where are you? Who are you? Show yourself." Kodono shouted, trying to sound brave. He. "Where do you think I am? Guess. But more importantly, is the Golden Pagoda safe? 20 faces always keeps his promises." "What are you talking about?" "The Golden Pagoda is right here in the alcove. A thief like you can't touch it." Kodono paced around the room, challenging the invisible enemy. He. "Manager, do you really think 20 faces is that naive? I know you've hidden the real pagoda underground and replaced it with a fake." Otorai and Kodono exchanged horrified glances. 20 faces knew their secret. Kodono's plan had failed. "That voice seems to be coming from the attic," Otorai whispered to Kodono. Indeed, the voice seemed to be coming from above. There was nowhere else for a person to hide. "Yes, you might be right. 20 faces might be hiding in the attic." Kodono stared at the ceiling. "Call the others. Have them remove the ceiling panels and capture him. Hurry." Otorai urged Kodono. He was more angry than afraid. He was determined to capture the thief. Kodono rushed out and called the other employees. 20 faces is in the house. Find him and capture him." The employees armed themselves with clubs and flashlights. Some guarded the entrances, while others searched the house. But after an hour of searching every corner, every closet, the attic, and even under the floor, they found nothing. Had 20 faces left? But how? All the exits were guarded. "Kodono, what do you think? This is unbelievable. I still feel like he's here, somewhere close by. I can almost hear him breathing." Otorai looked around nervously, his face pale. "I feel the same way, sir. He's a magician." A young employee rushed in. "Mr. Akechi is here." "Akechi? He's too late. If only he had come sooner. What was he doing all this time? He's not the great detective I've heard so much about." Otorai, frustrated by the theft, complained about Akechi. Ha. You seem upset. Are you saying I haven't been doing anything?" A voice said from the doorway. "Akechi, in his black suit, stood there. "Oh, Mr. Akechi, I apologize for what I said. But you haven't done anything, have you? Look. The golden pagoda is gone." "Gone?" "Yes. Stolen. Just as he predicted." "Stolen, you say?" "Yes. It's gone." Otorai explained Kodono's plan and pointed to the open trapdoor in the floor, where the real golden pagoda had been hidden. "I'm aware of that." Akechi's tone was dismissive. "You are? You knew. And you let him steal it?" Otorai was stunned. "Yes, I did." Akechi remained calm. "What? What are you?" Otorai was speechless. "Mr. Akechi, it seems you're happy the pagoda was stolen. That's not right. You promised to protect it." Kodono protested. "But I kept my promise." "Kept your promise? What are you talking about? The pagoda is gone." "Ha ha ha. What are you saying? The golden pagoda is right here. Look. It's gleaming." Akechi pointed to the pagoda in the alcove. "Don't be absurd. That's the fake. The real one was buried under the floor. That's the one that was stolen." Otorai shouted. "Now, wait a minute. What if the one you buried was the fake, and this one is the real one?" 20 Faces, thinking he was being clever, stole the fake. How amusing. "What? Are you joking? If that was the real one, we wouldn't be so upset. That's the fake one Kodono had made. It's just plated." "Plated or not, take a closer look." Akechi pressed the hidden button to disable the infrared system, then lifted the top section of the pagoda and held it out to Otorai. Akechi's confidence seemed to sway Otorai. He took the pagoda section and examined it closely. His face slowly changed color. The blood returned to his cheeks, and his eyes lit up with hope. This is real gold. It's not plated. It's solid gold. What's going on?" He rushed to the alcove and examined the rest of the pagoda. As a long-time dealer in precious metals, he knew it was genuine gold. "Mr. Akechi, you were right. This is the real one. We're saved." 20 Faces stole the fake. But who switched them? No one in this house knew the secret. And I was in this room the whole time. There was no opportunity to switch them. I had them switched. "You? Who did you ask to do it?" Otorai was stunned. "You have a young maid you hired recently, don't you?" "Yes." "Chiyo. You recommended her?" "Yes. She's the one who did it. She was my assistant." "Chiyo? That quiet girl. I can't believe she could do such a thing." "Ha ha ha. Chiyo isn't a girl. Take off your wig, Kobayashi." The girl smiled and pulled off her wig, revealing a boy's short hair. "Everyone, let me introduce my trusted assistant, Kobayashi Yoshio. This case was solved thanks to him. Give him a round of applause." Akechi beamed. The leader of the Boy Detectives Club had disguised himself as a maid and infiltrated the Otorai clock store. He had outwitted 20 Faces. "Amazing. None of us realized you were a boy. You did a great job, Kobayashi." "Thank you. Thank you for saving my treasure. Mr. Akechi, you have a fine assistant." Otorai was overjoyed, patting Kobayashi's head. "But Mr. Akechi, there's one thing I regret. 20 Faces taunted us earlier. If you had come sooner, you might have caught him." "Don't worry, Mr. Otorai. 20 Faces has been captured." "Captured? You captured him? When? Where? Where is he now?" "He's in this room. Right in front of us." What was Akechi talking about? Otorai and Kodono looked around the room. There was no one else there. Had 20 Faces turned into an invisible gas and was hiding in some corner, visible only to Akechi? "You are 20 Faces." Otorai looked around the room frantically, but the thief was nowhere to be seen. "Ha ha ha. Very funny. There's no one here but the four of us." The room, with its doors locked, contained only Otorai, Kodono, Akechi, and Kobayashi. What was Akechi talking about? That's right. There are only 4 of us. But 20 Faces is still in this room. "Sir, I don't understand. Can you be more specific?" Kodono asked nervously. "So, you want to know where 20 Faces is? May I tell you?" Akechi stared intently at Kodono. What are you saying?" Kodono looked startled. "Are you sure you want me to reveal who 20 Faces is?" Akechi's eyes flashed. Kodono, as if transfixed by his gaze, looked down. "Ha ha ha. 20 faces, your disguise is impressive. You look just like a 60-year-old man. But you can't fool me. You are 20 faces. No. That's absurd. Kodono stammered. Mr. Akechi, you must be mistaken. Kodono has worked in my store since his father's time. He's a loyal employee. He can't be 20 faces. You forget that 20 faces is a master of disguise. The real Kodono is indeed a loyal employee. But this man is not Kodono. Shortly after the first taunt, 20 faces imprisoned the real Kodono and took his place, coming to work every day and even going home to Kodono's family every night. No one suspected a thing. Could such a thing be possible? The old man standing before them looked exactly like Kodono. There was nothing suspicious about him. Could a disguise be that perfect? Just then, the eerie voice echoed again. He. Akechi, you're getting senile. Accusing an innocent old man just because you failed to capture 20 faces. Look closely, Akechi. I'm here. 20 faces is right here. The thief was still hiding somewhere in the room, sir. That's him. That's 20 faces. The voice is coming from the ceiling. See? It's not Kodono. Kodono isn't 20 faces. Otorai whispered, pointing at the ceiling, trembling with fear, but Akechi remained calm, staring at Otorai in silence. Then, another voice echoed through the room. Stop with the childish tricks. Do you think I don't know ventriloquism? Ha ha ha. Otorai shuddered. It was Akechi's voice, coming from the ceiling. But Akechi was standing right there, silent. It was as if he were in two places at once. Do you understand, Mr. Otorai? This is ventriloquism. The art of speaking without moving your lips. If I cover my mouth like this, it sounds like the voice is coming from somewhere else. From the ceiling, or from under the floor. Do you see? Now Otorai understood. If the voice had been ventriloquism all along, everything made sense. That's why they couldn't find 20 faces, despite searching the ceiling and under the floor. But was 20 faces still disguised as Kodono? Otorai looked at Kodono with suspicion. Kodono was pale, but he hadn't given up. A strange smile spread across his face. Ventriloquism? How could I possibly know such magic? Mr. Akechi, you're being absurd. I am not 20 faces. This is a false accusation. Just then, someone knocked on the wooden doors. Who is it? Come back later. You can't come in now. Otorai shouted. A voice from outside replied, It's me. Kodono. Please open the door. Kodono? Are you really Kodono? Otorai opened the doors. Standing there was Kodono, looking haggard. Sir, I apologize. I was captured by the thief. Mr. Akechi just rescued me. Kodono looked into the room and saw his double. You. Who are you? Two identical old men stood facing each other, their eyes burning with hostility. It was a surreal, terrifying sight. Everyone froze. Silence filled the room for several seconds, as if a film had stopped. The silence was broken by a sudden commotion and Kobayashi's scream, Sir. 20 faces is. The appearance of the real Kodono had sealed 20 faces' fate. He knew the game was up. He suddenly jumped down into the open trapdoor in the floor. He crouched down, as if doing something, and then, something unbelievable happened. He vanished. Had he used magic again? Had he turned into an invisible gas? Escape. Ha ha ha. Don't be surprised. He escaped underground. Akechi explained calmly. Underground? What do you mean? There's a secret tunnel under the floor. A tunnel? Yes. 20 faces dug a tunnel beforehand and, disguised as Kodono, tricked you into burying the real pagoda under the floor. Then, his accomplice came through the tunnel and took the pagoda. That's why you couldn't find any footprints. He didn't walk on the ground, he came through the tunnel. But I watched him bury the pagoda, and there was no tunnel. It was covered. Come and see. He covered the entrance with a metal plate and soil. 20 faces just opened the plate and jumped into the tunnel. That's how he vanished. They rushed to the trapdoor and looked down. A metal plate lay aside, revealing a large hole, like an old well. Where does this tunnel lead? Otorai asked, bewildered. There's an empty house behind this one. The tunnel leads there. We have to chase him. He'll escape. Sir, please go to the other house. Ha ha ha. Don't worry. Inspector Nakamura's men are waiting at the other end of the tunnel. They've probably captured him by now. Really? You planned all this? Thank you. Thank you. Now I can finally sleep peacefully. But had 20 Faces been captured? He was a cunning thief. Perhaps he had another trick up his sleeve. What was happening in the dark tunnel? 20 Faces crawled through the narrow tunnel towards the other end. The empty house was only about 20 meters away, separated from the clock store by a small garden and a wall. 20 Faces had rented the house and had his men dig the tunnel secretly. It was a crude tunnel, like an old mine shaft, reinforced with wooden beams. Barely wide enough for a person to crawl through. 20 Faces crawled through the dirt, reaching the exit under the empty house. He peeked out and quickly recoiled. Damn it. They're already here. He clicked his tongue and turned back. He had seen dark figures outside. Uniformed police officers, their cap visors and pistol grips gleaming faintly in the darkness. 20 Faces was trapped like a mole in a hole. 5 police officers were waiting outside, and behind him was Akechi. He could neither advance nor retreat. But he couldn't stay in the damp, dark tunnel forever yet. He didn't seem worried. He crawled back to the middle of the tunnel and retrieved a bundle from a recess in the wall. Heh, I'm not giving up yet. If they have 5 men, I have 10. If they have 10, I have 20. Even the great detective couldn't have predicted this. Impossible isn't in 20 Faces' vocabulary. He opened the bundle. Inside was a police uniform, a cap, a baton, and shoes. What foresight. He had hidden a disguise in the tunnel. Oh, I almost forgot. I have to remove this wig and makeup first. He took out a silver case, pulled out a cotton ball soaked in solvent, and carefully wiped his face and hair. The old man's white hair turned black, and the wrinkles disappeared, revealing a youthful face. Perfect. Now I'm a police officer, a thief turned policeman. He whistled cheerfully as he changed clothes in the cramped darkness. In the empty house, a tatami mat had been removed, revealing a hole in the floor, just like in the clock store. But this hole had no metal plate. It was the other end of the tunnel. 5 police officers were keeping watch, some standing in the hole, some sitting on the tatami mats, and some standing in the room. The lights were off. 2 officers held flashlights. If only Akechi had discovered this tunnel sooner, we could have caught the accomplice who took the pagoda, one officer whispered. But as long as we catch 20 Faces, the accomplice is as good as caught. Besides, the pagoda they stole was a fake. As long as we get the boss, we win. I can't wait for him to show up. They waited in the darkness, not even daring to smoke, time seeming to stand still. Did you hear something? Where? They grabbed their flashlights and stood up. This happened several times, just a rat. 20 Faces didn't appear, but then, a sound. The sound of dirt falling, the sound of breathing. 20 Faces was coming. The 5 officers tensed, their flashlights trained on the tunnel entrance. Hey, it's me. It's me. A voice called out from the tunnel. It wasn't the thief. It was a young police officer, a new face. Probably from a different precinct. What happened to the thief? Did he escape? One of the officers asked suspiciously. No, we caught him. My colleagues, led by Akechi, apprehended him. You should go over there. I'm supposed to inspect this tunnel, just in case any accomplices are hiding. But there's no one here. The young officer, jingling his handcuffs, emerged from the tunnel. They already caught him? The officers were disappointed. They felt cheated out of their chance to capture the thief. Akechi said, you can stop watching here and join them. I have to go back to the station now. Excuse me. The young officer walked towards the front door. The 5 officers felt uneasy. That's odd. He said he was supposed to inspect the tunnel, but he didn't report anything. And he didn't even use a flashlight. 20 Faces can disguise himself as anything. He even impersonated the museum director. What if? What if he was 20 Faces? Let's follow him. If that was him, we'll have some explaining to do to the inspector. Right. After him. The 5 officers ran out of the house and looked around the deserted street. It was past 1 o'clock in the morning. The usually bustling shopping street was deserted, lit only by the occasional street lamp. There he is, Let's call out to him. Hey! Hey! They shouted. The young officer glanced back, then ran even faster. He reached a small park, the concrete wall of the park on his right and a river on his left. He stopped, looked back, and saw no one. The 5 officers were still around the corner. Then, he crouched down and lifted a round, 50-centimeter metal plate, revealing a dark hole. A manhole. He jumped in and quickly closed the cover. The 5 officers arrived just as the cover closed. He was just here. He couldn't have gone far. Maybe he climbed over the wall into the park. Or maybe he jumped into the river. They searched the area, then continued towards the park entrance, passing over the manhole. The metal cover clanged under their feet. They had walked right over 20 Faces' head. People in Tokyo were so used to manholes that they rarely noticed them. 20 minutes later, the 5 officers returned to the clock store, empty-handed, and reported to Akechi. Was Akechi disappointed? Did he get angry at the officer's blunder? No. He remained calm, a smile playing on his lips. Thank you for your hard work. I didn't expect him to have a disguise hidden in the tunnel. But don't be discouraged. I have a backup plan. 20 Faces might think he has escaped, but he's still caught in my web. Just watch. I'll have my revenge by tomorrow morning. In fact, it's better that he escaped. My backup plan is even more brilliant. You'll see how 20 Faces cries. You'll see how my men work. Come, Kobayashi, let's go to 20 Faces' final stage. Akechi and Kobayashi left the clock store, got into a waiting car, and drove off into the night mist. The strange conspiracy. Let's return to the park and see what 20 Faces is doing in the manhole. After the officers left, the area became silent again. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. The streets were deserted. A dog barked in the distance, then silence returned. The trees in the park rustled, and a night bird cried. The sky was overcast. The only light came from the street lamps, one of which dimly lit the manhole cover. The cover remained motionless. What was 20 Faces doing in the dark hole? 2 hours passed. 4 o'clock. The eastern sky began to lighten. A factory whistle blew in the distance, signaling the approaching dawn. The manhole cover moved slightly, as if alive. It clanged, slid aside, and a dark hole appeared, growing larger and larger. A new, grey fedora emerged from the hole, followed by the face of a well-dressed gentleman with a neatly trimmed mustache, a white collar, a colourful tie, and a perfectly tailored suit. He looked around cautiously, then jumped out, quickly closed the manhole cover, and walked away. It was 20 Faces in disguise. He always hid a disguise in a nearby manhole, in case he needed to escape. If pursued, he would jump into the manhole, change clothes, and walk away unnoticed. Perhaps there's a manhole near your house with a large black bundle hidden inside. If you find one, it means 20 Faces is planning something in your neighborhood. 20 Faces hailed a taxi on the main street and gave the driver directions. The car sped through the empty streets. It passed through Ginza, crossed Shinbashi, and continued towards Shinagawa. Then, it turned onto the Kihin National Highway, drove west for about a kilometer, turned north onto a side street, and entered a residential area. The houses thinned out, and a small hill covered with trees came into view. On top of the hill stood an old Western-style house. Here's fine, 20 Faces said. He paid the driver and walked up the hill, through the trees, and towards the house. This was 20 Faces' hideout. He had reached his safe haven. Had Akechi's efforts been in vain? Had 20 Faces successfully evaded him? Mystery in the art room. As 20 Faces opened the door and entered the house, one of his accomplices appeared. A scruffy man with messy hair and a beard. Welcome back. A great success, I presume? Great success. What are you talking about? I spent the night in a manhole. It was a complete failure. But we got the Golden Pagoda, didn't we? The Golden Pagoda? Throw it away. It's a fake. Akechi tricked us again. And that brat Kobayashi. Disguised as a maid. That little runt is too clever. What happened? I don't understand. It doesn't matter now. I'm exhausted. We'll talk later. We have to start over. 20 Faces yawned and walked down the hallway towards his bedroom. The accomplice followed him to the door, but after 20 Faces went inside and closed the door, he remained standing in the dimly lit corridor, lost in thought. After about 5 minutes, he heard 20 Faces snoring. He smiled, turned, and walked back to the entrance. He went outside and signaled someone in the woods with hand gestures. It was a little before 5 o'clock in the morning. The woods were still dark. Who was hiding there so early in the morning? As the accomplice signaled, something white and round, like a human face, appeared momentarily in the bushes. The accomplice then raised both arms and flapped them like a bird 3 times. He was definitely signaling someone. Who was it? Friend or foe? After the signal, the face in the bushes disappeared, the leaves rustled as if a large animal was running through the undergrowth, and a dark shadow darted down the hill. Who was that? And what was the signal about? 7 hours later, around noon, 20 Faces woke up. He had slept well and was feeling refreshed. He took a shower, then, as was his habit, opened a hidden door in the hallway and descended to his underground art room. The house had a large basement that served as his secret art gallery. As you know, 20 Faces didn't steal money or harm people. His only desire was to collect art. His previous hideout had been discovered by Akechi during the National Museum incident, and his collection had been confiscated. But he had since amassed a new collection, creating a secret treasure trove in the basement of this new hideout. It was a large room, about 20 tatami mats in size, lavishly decorated. Japanese scrolls and Western paintings covered the walls. Glass cases displayed dazzling jewelry and precious metalwork. 11 wooden Buddha statues from various periods stood on pedestals. Every piece was a valuable antique. It was like a private museum being underground. The room had no windows, only a small skylight in the ceiling, letting in a dim light. Even during the day, it was like twilight. An elaborate chandelier hung from the ceiling, but 20 Faces rarely used it. He preferred the somber atmosphere, which made the old paintings and statues seem even more ancient and sacred. 20 Faces stood in the center of the room, admiring his collection. Akechi thinks he's so clever, switching the pagodas. But what's one pagoda? I have all these treasures. Even Akechi doesn't know about this magnificent art room. He walked towards a statue in the corner. Exquisite craftsmanship. A national treasure. Almost lifelike. He stroked the shoulder of the statue, then stopped, staring at its face in surprise. The statue felt warm. Not just warm, but pulsating. Its chest rose and fell as if it were breathing. Even a lifelike statue shouldn't breathe or have a pulse. It was strange, eerie. He tapped the statue's chest. It felt soft, not hard like wood. A thought struck him. Hey, who are you? He shouted. The statue moved. A pistol emerged from beneath its tattered robes and pointed at his chest. Kobayashi. 20 Faces recognized the trick. He had seen it before. The statue didn't answer. It pointed behind 20 Faces with its left hand. 20 Faces turned around. All the statues in the room were moving, pistols in their hands. 11 statues, pointing their guns at him from all directions. Even 20 Faces was stunned. He looked around frantically. Am I dreaming? Or am I losing my mind? 11 statues, all coming to life, pointing guns at me. This can't be happening. He felt dizzy, as if he might faint. What's wrong? You look pale. His accomplice entered the room. I feel dizzy. Check these statues. They seem strange. Ha. The statues have come to life. It's divine retribution. 20 Faces has been punished by heaven. What? Divine retribution. Your time is up. Not only were the statues moving, but his accomplice was also acting strangely. 20 Faces was losing his grip on reality. Ha. Don't be ridiculous. A great thief like 20 Faces, scared of statues? Ha. You look like a deer caught in headlights. The accomplice's voice changed. The raspy voice turned into a clear, melodic voice that 20 Faces recognized. Could it be? It must be. He was too afraid to say the name. Ha. Don't you recognize me? It's me. The accomplice ripped off his beard, revealing a youthful face. Akechi Kogoro. Indeed. My disguise isn't bad, is it? I even fooled the master of disguise. Of course, it was early morning, still dark, and this basement is dimly lit, so it wasn't that difficult. 20 Faces was momentarily stunned, but he quickly recovered. So, what are you going to do with me, detective? He sneered, walking towards the exit. Arrest you. Akechi blocked his path. What if I refuse? These statues will shoot. He. Don't try to scare me. If you refuse, I'll do this. The two men grappled, and with a loud thud, 20 faces was thrown to the floor. A perfect Seoinage point. 20 faces lay on the floor, stunned. He hadn't known Akechi was so strong. He knew a little judo himself and could tell that Akechi was far superior. He knew he couldn't win. I lost. He. What a pathetic end for 20 faces. He stood up with a bitter smile. So, what are you going to do? The great explosion. Surrounded by the 11 statues and under Akechi's watchful eye, 20 faces paced around the art room. All my efforts, wasted. Losing this collection is the most painful part. Akechi, have mercy. At least give me some time to say goodbye to my treasures before you call the police. He knew the house was surrounded. Akechi, seemingly moved by his plea, stood with his arms crossed, allowing him some time. 20 faces walked around the room, gradually moving away from Akechi. He reached a corner, crouched down, and fumbled with something on the floor. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed through the room, and he vanished. This was his final trick. A trapdoor in the floor led to another, deeper cellar. He had exploited Akechi's momentary lapse in attention and escaped into the hole. Had Akechi been tricked again? Had he lost 20 faces after cornering him? No. Akechi remained calm, smiling. He walked to the trapdoor and looked down. 20 faces. What were you thinking? Did you think I didn't know about this hole? I know it very well. In fact, I've been using it as a prison. Look around. You'll find 3 of your men down there, bound and gagged. They were interfering with my investigation, so I locked them up last night. One of them is wearing only a shirt. I borrowed his clothes, put on a beard and some makeup, and impersonated your accomplice. I followed him when he carried the fake golden pagoda out of the tunnel at the clock store. That's how I found your hideout. Ha. You've walked into a trap, 20 faces. You've locked yourself in your own prison. There's no other exit. It's a tomb. You've saved me the trouble of tying you up. Ha. Akechi turned to the 11 statues. Kobayashi, you can all come out now. Go outside and tell the police to come and get 20 faces. As if on cue, the 11 statues jumped down from their pedestals and lined up in the center of the room. They were the boy detectives. They couldn't just stand by and watch. They wanted to play a part in capturing 20 faces, inspired by Kobayashi's previous exploits, and taking advantage of the 11 Buddha statues in the dimly lit art room. They had disguised themselves as statues to frighten 20 faces. They had asked Akechi to include them in his plan. The dark figure that had run through the woods at dawn, responding to Akechi's signal, had been Kobayashi. He had then returned with the other boy detectives. The 11 statues stood in 3 rows, saluted Akechi, and shouted, "Hurrah for Mr. Akechi! Hurrah for the Boy Detectives Club!" They turned and marched out of the room, led by Kobayashi. Akechi and 20 faces were alone in the art room. They're good kids. They really hate you. I wouldn't normally involve them in something like this, but they were so eager. And I thought, well, it's just 20 faces. The gentleman thief. The art lover who hates violence. He won't hurt them. So, I let them join in. Thanks to them, I was able to stay one step ahead of you. Your face when the statues came to life was priceless. Ha. Never underestimate children. He. The gentleman thief, you say? The art lover who hates violence. That's a dangerous assumption, detective. 20 faces' voice echoed from the hole. What do you mean? For example, right now. I'm trapped. I can't escape. And the man standing above me is far superior to me in both intellect and strength. Are you challenging me to a duel? What good would that do now? The house is surrounded. They'll be here any minute to arrest me. I'm not talking about a duel. I'm talking about mutual destruction. His voice became dark and menacing. Mutual destruction? Yes. I'm a gentleman thief. I don't carry weapons. So, I can't challenge you to a sword fight like a samurai. But I have something even better. You've made a fatal mistake, detective. He. You wouldn't understand. There are a few barrels of liquor in this hole. You saw them, didn't you? But what do you think is inside those barrels? He. I anticipated this. I prepared for my own demise. You called this hole a tomb, didn't you? It is a tomb. I jumped into it knowing it was a tomb. A tomb where both body and soul are obliterated gunpowder. Those barrels are filled with gunpowder. I might not have a sword, but I have matches. All I have to do is strike a match and throw it into a barrel, and we'll both be blown to pieces. He. He rolled a barrel to the center of the hole and began to open it. Even Akechi was startled. Damn it. Why didn't I check those barrels? He couldn't let 20 faces take him down with him. He still had work to do. He had to escape. It was a race against time. Could he escape before 20 faces lit the fuse? Akechi ran out of the art room, up the stairs, and to the entrance. He burst through the front door, bumping into a dozen police officers who were about to enter. Don't go in. He's going to blow up the house. Run. He pushed past them and ran into the woods. The officers, hearing the word gunpowder, followed him in panic. Everyone, get away from the house. It's going to explode. Run. The officers surrounding the house ran down the hill. How had they managed to escape in time? Had 20 faces fumbled with the barrel? Or were his matches wet? Just as everyone reached a safe distance, the explosion came. It was a deafening roar, like an earthquake. The house seemed to lift off the ground. But when they opened their eyes, the house was still standing. The explosion had been contained within the basement and the first floor. Black smoke billowed from the windows, followed by flames. The house was quickly engulfed in fire. Thus, 20 faces met his end. After the fire was extinguished, the ruins were searched. But as 20 faces had predicted, no bodies were found. Neither his, nor his accomplices.